If there's anything we've learned in the 5 years since 45 came down that escalator, it's that he cannot thrive without a constant stream of attention, adulation, and affirmation. It's why he's obsessed with cable news, especially Foe in particular. Why his cabinet meetings begin with um, almost cult worshipping praise from each of his appointees, and why he's constantly touting his high support from other Republicans. It's also why on Saturday, he held an indoor Klan rally in the midst of a respiratory disease pandemic. I guarantee you, after Saturday, if everything goes well, he's going to be in a much better mood, an unnamed 45 political advisor told CNN the day before the event. He believes he needs to be out there fighting, and he feeds off the energy of his inbred crowd. The squatter is plainly unable to handle any bad news, or even the idea that he isn't popular, or he isn't popular and he's not liked, he's hated. Someone who rejects the idea of being rejected may, for example, believe that voter fraud is the only threat to his reelection, and he's constructed a bubble, let's call it a safe space, in which he's insulated from bad news, negative feedback, and pretty much any kind of criticism. The result is that he's unable to respond to a changing national mood, unable to adjust to a public that wants more leadership than a spectacle. um, we have plenty of evidence that 45 shields himself from anything that could disrupt the illusion of popularity and success he's constructed around himself. At the Tulsa Klan rally, he told the little audience that when faced with evidence of rising coronavirus infection rates, he urged his team to reduce the rate of testing. When you do testing to that extent, you're going to find more people, you're going to find more cases. So I said to my people, slow down testing down, he said. His press secretary says that this was a comment that he made in jest, but 45 has expressed similar sentiments in the past. If we did very little testing, we wouldn't have had the most cases, he said in May during a meeting with Kim Reynolds, the governor of Iowa. So in a way, by doing all of this testing, we make ourselves look bad. Likewise, on the question of his campaign, the squatter's re-election staff knows just what he wants to hear. They've either downplayed his poor numbers, telling him that the polls showing Biden ahead skew Democratic, or challenged him outright. After a CNN poll found him trailing Biden by 14 points, with the 45 campaign sent a cease and desist letter to Jeff Zucker, the president of the CNN network, demanding that he retract the poll and apologize for its release. The poll read the letter as a stunt meant to cause voter suppression, stifle momentum and enthusiasm for the squatter, and present a false view generally of the actual support across America for the squatter. Technically, 45 doesn't have any fucking support. The obvious problem with building a cocoon of praise and sycophancy around oneself, as any failed authoritarian could explain, is that it hinders one's ability to respond to conditions on the ground, whether that's a pandemic or a squatter or race. You can't change course if you refuse to see what's happening in front of you. 45 rejects his poor ratings on the pandemic and the protests. 58% of Americans disapprove of his handling of the coronavirus, and 60% disapprove of his handling of the demonstrations to protest the death of George Floyd, and so he continues to do the things that have placed him in a historically weak position for an incumbent squatter seeking re-election. If 45 were less cloistered, he might know that to improve his prospects, he has to speak to voters on the fence between him and Biden. He has to address their fears and make a positive case for his administration. But because he lives within the confines of a gated maggot community, 45 has no sense of what the skeptical public wants to hear. This too was apparent at his Klan rally, where he spoke at length about the minor controversies: his ability to drink a glass of water with only one hand, his ability to walk down a ramp, that are almost certainly irrelevant to everyone other than himself and his staunchest inbred supporters. And it's not just 45 who's closed off from the rest of the world. Republican officials across the country refuse to believe that the squatter is on the path to defeat. The more bad things happen in the country, it just solidifies support for 45. No, it doesn't. One North Carolina Republican Party county chairman told Politico in a story of the belief within Republican circles that coronavirus is on its way out and polls are unreliable. We can't predict what will happen in November. But right now, 45 is losing the squatter race. Democrats are likely to hold the House of Representatives, and Republicans are at risk of losing the Senate. A backlash is brewing, and 45 can't see or even sense it. There are those in his camp like Moscow Mitch, the Republican majority leader of the Senate, who could see the writing on the wall. This is presumably why he's pushing a police reform bill to give Republicans something to tout in the fall to those moderate voters who sympathize with the protesters. But it's not clear if the conservative movement as a whole knows what it has unleashed by hitching its wagon to 45. They thought they were getting 252 beautiful, brand new, conservative, wonderful judges, and a chance to cement their political preferences onto the constitutional order. What they may receive instead is a newly energized and increasingly what they call Democratic Republic that has the numbers to sink that project for at least a lesser future, if not much longer.